All right, everybody, welcome to this edition, this May 19th, 2015 edition of the O'Hara News and Editorial. We have joining us tonight Brian Danielson of Integrity for Maine. Integrity for Maine was integral in changing the outcome, or in influencing, rather, the outcome of the elections in Maine, specifically for the 7th Prosecutorial District, which I'm sure everyone listening is familiar with, that whole fiasco up there. Integral in the change of faces in that prosecutorial district, change for the better, of course, and he's been engaged in lots and lots of activism for fathers' rights and cleaning up the corrupt prosecutorial culture there in the state of Maine, which is very, very corrupt, and setting down a course excuse me one second. So he's here with us tonight. Brian, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Bob. I'm actually hearing a little bit of feedback.
All right, yeah, I just there was a video popped up on my screen, and I stopped it now. Is it still there? Are you hearing some feedback for yourself?
No, I'm actually hearing the whole show duplicated, but like a 20-second delay.
Do you have the actual link to the YouTube channel that I sent to you? That's probably what's doing it. Look at all the tabs you have open on your browser and shut the one that's on YouTube. You see it? You got it, Brian? Hello, Brian.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Did you get it?
All right, perfect.
Okay, good.
I think we're good now.
Okay. Yeah, that's all right, man. That happens all the time. So, Brian, thanks for coming here with us tonight and joining us.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here. You know.
Great. Yeah, yeah, sure. You've been on the show before, and a lot has happened since the last time you were on the show. Of course, we had the election. When was the last time you were on the show? That was like in October, right? Something like that.
It was, I think, in the middle of October, right?
Yeah, it was before the election, and there was a lot to talk about then. And there's certainly a lot to talk about now. But anyway, first let's talk about Integrity for Maine. It's a great organization that's done a lot, but it currently now is inactive. But tell us when you started it, what the mission was, and what you hoped to accomplish, and really what's been accomplished so far. And there's been so much, and just give us some highlights we'll talk about.
Right. Well, I mean, several years ago, when I heard about Vladek Filler's situation in Maine, I mean, I knew there must have been other victims who were dealing with the same sort of thing. I mean, it's typically not one of those things that it just happens to one person. It's pretty systemic. So, you know, when I looked at all this, and I'm like, you know, I'm at my best when I'm helping others. So I started asking around, talking to the community, which led me to the other victims. You know, I've talked to people who have lost businesses. They've been reduced to food stamps, you know, just to make ends meet because, you know, all these legal obligations that just keep piling up on them. From my personal perspective, you know, I've always looked at justice as like being a restorative process, you know, where crime affects not only just the victim but the offender and the community as a whole. You know, so when businesses close and people are losing their jobs as a result of crime and you know, allegations or false allegations of criminal activity, you know, the community is not going to grow. And that's kind of a thing that's been hurting Maine for such a long time. You know, so I really wanted to get involved and help people, and you know, after speaking to a lot of the victims, I said, you know, I really need to start Integrity for Maine, because I mean that's really what Maine needs. I mean, We need to start looking at the specific issues of the cause and effect of different things, and we need to raise awareness for the need for positive change in the community. You know, in Hancock and Washington County, I mean, it was definitely evident to me that, you know, in order for victims to heal, they needed to feel that they were a part of a community. They needed to understand that there are other people who are in the same situation that they are in. You know, so in order to be able to fix the system, you know, people need to be aware of what was going on, and, you know, political candidates need to say, okay, things are broken. We need to focus on fixing the problem. You know, whatever way or methods that, you know, they can do to fix it. You know, I was very happy that, you know, Matt Foster was elected, and you know, the 40 years of you know, problems in the community have kind of gone away, but you know, it's still
There's still
a lot of work and challenges that Matt Foster is facing. I mean, it's going to take years, you know, for things to get cleaned up and just for people to heal, and there's still a lot of work left.
Let's talk. Of course, this kind of problem that you've just described is really all over the country. It's in not just here in the U.S. It's certainly in Canada, and in the U.K., Australia, increasingly in India, all over the world. But here in the U.S., Maine has certainly got a lot of attention from fathers and men's rights activists. Can you tell us what it is about, and it can arguably be said that it's particularly been bad there. Can you tell us what it is that makes Maine a particularly, or has historically made the state of Maine a particularly tough place for fathers or finding themselves in divorce disputes or nasty custody disputes, or being falsely, or men in general being falsely accused of something? Could you give us some background on the culture that has created that situation? If you could, just your thoughts about that.
Well, I mean, part of the problem here is, you know, there's not a lot of jobs, and because of, you know, things like affirmative action and whatnot, you know, women are getting further ahead, and, you know, more women are going to college, and men are, you know, going more towards trades. I mean, it's hard to put, you know, everything in perspective, you know, under one certain category, but there are many different factors that are causing this problem. I mean, you know, Maine is politically, right, I mean, right now it's, you know, Governor LePage is more Tea Party focused. Before LePage, I mean, we had a very liberal governor who, I mean, made some, you know, choices as far as politically as how things should go, but I mean, it's sort of, Maine is representative of the whole United States as far as what's happening to men and fathers, and it's just, you know, we're an aging population here in Maine, so men are an easy target. So,
but that's pretty broad, and I know you don't want to get too specific, but of course, I don't want to get too much into the personalities involved. But what, when Integrity for Maine started, what were some of the focal points of as far as goals were concerned for Integrity for Maine? What was it that you had hoped to accomplish?
Well, I mean, originally, I mean, it was, you know, focusing on helping Vladek Filler with his issues, you know, with the court system, and, you know, talking to victims who were in the same boat that Vladek was in, but unfortunately they weren't getting the publicity because they were feeling segregated. They didn't feel like they had anybody on their side, and that's part of the issue with the men's rights issues. we don't have any places to turn to. We don't have these domestic violence centers, and we don't have these shelters, or just people to talk to. There's organizations that they get close to $1 million a year in funding from the federal and state government to basically help women, and men are kind of left to the homeless shelters, and it's a difficult situation, and you have the legal community who, and I don't want to talk bad about the legal community. I mean, there's a lot of great lawyers out there, but there are still many attorneys who feel that women should always get the children. It doesn't matter how good the father is or how bad the mother is. Women and children go together, and that's sort of. I mean, I've studied sociology, and that's any sort of social work. It's always women and children. It's like the Titanic. Women and children get off the boat.
Yeah, Dad's gonna die now.
Right.
It's literally to the exclusion of the father in most cases. Even unless of course, mom is completely worthless and it is a complete drug addict, can't take care of herself. Only then will they consider giving dad custody. But oftentimes, and I've seen this, the mother's parents will get custody of the children, and when that happens, dad never sees the kids again. I've seen that happen a lot.
Right. Well, I mean, I know a gentleman who went through a custody battle. His ex-girlfriend, they weren't married. And if you're not married, it's even worse for fathers because you have to prove paternity and go through that whole mess. But she, and this is according to him, she was a drug addict. She flipped out, was going to kill herself on the floor in front of the child, and Department of Human Services was involved, and just the best he could do was 50-50 custody.
Right.
It just
great.
It doesn't make sense.
That's pretty
to me.
good. Oftentimes, a lot of lawyers will tell you, "Wow, hey, you did really good, man. Wow, I can't believe you actually pulled that off."
Right. I mean,
yeah, sure.
But you have DHS involved saying the mother's an addict. She's not good for the child, but then the judge goes in and says, "Well, sorry, we're going to focus on 50-50."
Because he knows that he can't get money from mom, and that he's going to have to spend, and that the court system's going to have to spend money on putting mom in jail for failure to pay child support, and bringing mom to court for this. So he just much rather not go through that. If he can, I mean, do you think that's a correct analysis? Do you think that's what it is?
I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, different judges have different philosophical views as far as how the law should be. It's tough to. I mean, it's tough to be a father. It's tough to be a parent in general. Because typically, if a couple is married, the government's not going to get involved in your relationship unless things break down.
Right.
But once they do,
it's like they're both just waiting to jump in and take all and take it for everything they can. That's
right.
What
I mean, I went through it in my divorce. I spent tens of thousands of dollars while my ex-wife was getting a pro bono attorney from making false allegations. So here you go. We're going to help you.
Right.
It's this system of entitlement where if you make an allegation, and this is something that Vladek went through, you make that allegation, and there's all these organizations to start giving you legal advice and housing and whatever you need, but a male goes to the police or goes to one of these organizations, and they're going to be like, "Whoa, your wife beat you? Yeah, that's funny."
There's no resources for you.
Right, exactly.
And of course, there's the business of men forcing to pay for their soon-to-be ex-wives' legal counsel, which I think is completely, it just breeds corruption.
Yep.
Breeds corruption. Anyway, let's talk about the recent election in Maine. Not so recent now, but let's talk about the election and how the landscape has changed.
Well, I mean, I just kind of want to briefly mention, I have to make a shout out to A Voice for Men. I mean, they were instrumental too in helping with the rally that I had in May in 2014. I had a lot of people come together. There were victims and former and current political candidates, as well as activists like Daddy Justice, Voice for Men, Sage Gerard. It was great to get everybody together, just to say, hey, we support you. There needs to be change in the community. We're here. Let us know what we can do to help. It's really heartbreaking to hear these stories of the victims, and what the families have gone through. I mean, I had an opportunity to educate the community about these, about the victims, and during the past political election, and I was able to attend many of the functions, like the DA debates and whatnot, and I made sure I talked to a lot of the people there, and I asked the tough questions. I mean, I was on Maine TV questioning Bill Entwistle, and Matt Foster about the debates, and they're it was a funny situation because you could see the tension, just asking these questions, and a lot of the people really had no idea about what was going on in that office.
Right, they had no, and like for the first time, it's being exposed in public on TV. People watching this stuff. What I mean, was there a sense the public for the first time was saying, "Oh wow, this is really messed up. What's going on here with the 7th Prosecutorial District? Why haven't we seen this?" Did you get the sense that was that there was?
Well, I mean, partly it was that, but you here's the thing. I mean, you have the local newspapers who weren't really reporting on what was actually going on. I mean, they were taking the safe position, of what could be proven, and I don't want to say they were actually defending that DA's office, but things could have gone differently, and they could have educated the community a little bit more. And that's one of the focuses for Integrity for Maine, was
to educate the public.
They needed to be educated. I talked to so many people. Who's this Vladek Filler guy? I mean, what happened? I'm handing out flyers. I'm talking to them and explaining to them what's actually going on. They had no idea. They understood the little issues within their tiny community, but outside of that little circle, they had no idea. And that's an issue with the local news, where they're not reporting it, and that was a big struggle to try to get some of the things printed in the press.
It's interesting. Well, I mean, I've seen this before. Kind of my own analysis of that, putting my own 2 cents in. What happens is you have a local press corps that is very comfortable. They're doing their job. They're making their living doing this. They have their own little status in the local community there, and they're scared of losing access to government officials, because if they do that, they'll lose material to put in the newspaper. and then they'll lose their jobs. So they don't want to make it's literally their bread and butter. They don't want to make their bread and butter look bad. So, and it's unfortunate that it's like that, but that's why. So, and this isn't just on the local level, but on the national level too. That's probably the main reason why.
I mean, that happens everywhere.
You can't trust the press to do their job. As a citizen, you have to question what the news media tells you because they have their own agenda, and it has nothing to do with like giving you the truth. It doesn't.
Well, it's like that movie. You ever see the movie Wag the Dog?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So it's this whole show, and they say, even a lot of lawyers in Maine, you go to court, family court especially, it's all about show. It's all about theater. Who can create the biggest, most elaborate story that the judge is just going to accept for the truth. So however that happens, that's why it's so important to be able to have such a great attorney who's going to advocate for you, because unfortunately the way the system's set up, you pay the attorney whether you win or lose.
Yeah,
they're making their money,
and the more they can drag it out, the more money they make. And whoever wins doesn't really matter to most, especially in the family court system. Whoever wins doesn't matter to them. It's however they get the most money.
Well, I mean, for some attorneys, I mean, they're in it just for the money. I mean, there's some great attorneys out there. I mean, I've talked to a lot of great attorneys who care about the community, who want to see the system of restorative justice, where it's actually preventing crime, it's getting the community involved in the whole process. Vermont has a great restorative justice program. It's still a work in progress here in Maine, so that's something that I would hope would happen here.
Tell us about Vermont. What's different about Vermont?
Well, I mean, they focus justice as not revenge. It's not. I mean, it affects the community. It affects the individual, the family, the victims. It's a cause and effect sort of thing, and they understand that. So in order to fix the problem, instead of just punishing someone and nobody learning their lesson, so they're once they get out of prison or whatever, they're back on the street and they're reoffending. This is getting people involved and kind of teaching them a little bit of humility. This shouldn't have happened. This is how your actions affect the community, not just yourself or the victim, but it's like a balance between the individual and the society, and you have to kind of find that happy medium. So, I mean, crime in Vermont is much lower. I mean, there's a lower population, but it's much lower
per capita?
Per capita than many other places. I mean, even Maine doesn't have a lot of crime, thankfully, but there's still that struggle with, should we be punishing this or should we be punishing that? How should we handle that? I mean, there's still this ongoing debate. I mean, and this kind of debate's been going on for hundreds of years of how the legal process should work, and you have different political factions going in there and trying to influence how it should be viewed, and that's kind of how fathers kind of lost their way in the 50s and 60s.
Back to the election.
Okay.
There was an election. Matt Foster won the DA's seat for the prosecutorial. He beat out Paul Kavanaugh.
Well, that Paul Kavanaugh was for the primary.
Right.
For the actual election for DA was Bill Entwistle.
Well, of course, that's Entwistle. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go over the mechanics of this, because it was a while ago. I'm still a bit. I mean, when it was happening, I was on top of it. It was a bit a while ago. So,
Right.
Matt Foster wanted to run for the DA's office in the 7th Prosecutorial District.
And this was his second time running.
Yeah, and Bill Entwistle was the kind of heir apparent to Carlotta, right? Mary Crumbs.
Well, after the whole Vladek Filler thing, Carlotta Bisogno wasn't reelectable. I mean, she was going to put herself out there. It would have caused a lot of backlash for herself. So,
and how did that happen? Because of you guys, right? Because you were exposing what she was doing. Was it finally that the people were realizing that? I mean, was it just Integrity for Maine that had been exposing her, or was it that people in general were kind of realizing that?
Well, I mean, I think Vladek Filler, A Voice for Men, NCFM. I mean, there were a lot of organizations, were advocating for Vladek Filler.
Right.
I came in late to the show.
We fucked their shit up, is what we did. We call it. I mean, I hate to say a curse word on the air, but that's what we used to call it back then, and that's what I still call it now. So.
Well, I mean,
it's interesting, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but because like as an activist who lives in Washington D.C., and there are a lot of people like Sage Girardi lives in Georgia, Paul lives in Houston. James lives in near Dallas in Irving, Texas, and there are activists all over the country that were interested in what was going on. We're trying to make an effect, and we actually did, which is incredible. I mean, we actually affected what happened. People from all over the world. Because I remember when Ed Bartlett came up with a list of signatures, thousands of signatures from all over the world, saying, "Hey, look. Mary Kellett is corrupt. She needs to be taken out." And look, all these people all over the world are looking at this. Were people in the community kind of aghast that there was a body of people from all over the world that were actively trying to make a change in their local community? Because this is not a big community. It's kind of a small. Well, I don't want to say rural.
Well, I mean, compared to a lot of places, yeah, it's still rural, but you have to think like this. I mean, a lot of those signatures went to the governor. Mm-hmm. It went on his desk. It didn't go much further than that. I mean, sure. A lot of people were starting to understand about all the corruption, but you actually go to the community and you talk to the people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that prosecutor, I know him. He's an asshole," or yeah, he destroyed my family. He did this or she did that, and I mean, to this day, I don't know if it was Carlotta Bisogno, leading the way and saying this is what needs to go. I think, it became this philosophy out of that office, and 40 years they were doing the same thing. It was the same sort of group. Because I mean, Carlotta Bisogno was only in there for 4 years. I believe it was 4 years.
And who was in there before her? It was this guy,
Michael Povich, who had been in there for a long time, and then he retired. But I hear, through the community. I mean, basically, he trained everyone in that office, and it was his philosophy that got put into that office.
Right.
I mean, that's before my time. I mean, I can only, just talking to the community and just how they have been dealing with that office for such a long time. It's pretty crazy. It's some of the stories that's coming out of their mouths. And I had spoke to.
How big was the problem? You say, because we know about Vladek Filler, and we knew that this was a huge systemic problem. If you can give us an idea of how big the problem was, and I know that you've been actively involved in seeking out people and helping people who've been affected by this corrupt system in that locale. Was it? I mean, was there a line of people a mile long? Because that's the impression we got. That there was that there were many, not just dozens, but many people that were being put through this meat grinder, and the local press wasn't saying anything about it. There were just these local prosecutors that were completely out of control, and the people that were being victimized them were getting no help from the press, no attention from the community, and the only reason why anything happened is because outside activists, and also, of course, internal activists like yourself, with the help of a broader community of activists, said, hey, there's this problem here. So how many victims were there? Was this something that was just, for the size of the community, just huge? Because the numbers we've seen indicated likewise. Because the level of prosecutions were outrageous for the
Right.
population.
Well, I mean, here's part of the problem is that, it not only affects just that one person, but it affects their family. So I'm hearing it from this person and that person, or I know my relative had this issue and this issue happened with somebody else. I mean, I basically investigated close to 100 cases, which had varying degrees of misconduct. But I say misconduct loosely because it all depends upon how the legal system wants to interpret what's misconduct and what's not. I mean, Vladek Filler was, his strength is amazing. I mean, with the bar complaints that he filed, he's always believed in his innocence, and he's always fought for what he believed in. And I think we need more people like that. But when you're pushed down, and a lot of people in that community is just they feel powerless, you kind of have to look at yourself and say, okay, what can I do? I mean, Vladek had, these armies of organizations, fighting for him. And then I went in there and I started talking to these people. I mean, one woman, it basically said that her children were threatened by the prosecutor's office, that they were going to take the child away if she didn't testify against her husband.
Classic technique.
Oh, I'm going to call DHS and have your kids taken away if you don't testify. It's
exactly.
This is these tactics to convict someone.
Something that is clearly unconstitutional and should be illegal, but it's something that prosecutors do all the time.
And these things are debated, in the Supreme Court. Imbler versus Packman. There's so many. There's so many Supreme Court cases focused on prosecutorial misconduct and what the government can do and can't do. We have to remember that the government, the Constitution was created to protect our rights, not to protect the government.
Yeah, it's basically the boundary between the government and the individual citizen, and that's what the Bill of Rights is all about.
Right, absolutely.
When you see what's going on with prosecutorial misconduct, of course, you have these individuals that are power hungry, they're just corrupt, they want money, or they just have this weird ideological thing going on. But in a higher sense, I feel there is this movement of individuals, and there's this statist movement that's just organic, and they want to take away the power of the individual and replace it with the power of the state. And what do you do to make that happen? You start attacking basic constitutional rights. You erode the first thing you do is you erode the definition of prosecutorial misconduct. And it's just something that happens because power wants more of itself.
Right.
I mean, that philosophical here, but don't you think that that's kind of what happens?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, back in the 50s and 60s, when the second wave of feminism was getting involved, really big, their goal was to destroy the family.
Right.
And they actually attacked the black community. I mean, the black community. Of course,
because they're easy to attack. They're a minority. Right. And they say, we're here to help you. We want to help the poor black women, the poor black children. No, they want to destroy them, and that's what they did.
Right, exactly.
That's my analysis of it.
Well, what actually happened was because the civil rights movement started to decline, you had the feminist movement reaching out to these black women.
Right, their goals were being met, but you still had all these statist people, and let's make sure of this. Second wave feminism is a statist ideology. It is all about the power of the state. It's almost, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right.
I do want to say something more about this, but I want to let you continue with what you're saying before I go off on a rant. So go ahead, please.
Well, I wrote a paper, about this, and it's basically focused on, how the civil rights movement broke down, and the white feminists went after the black women to abandon their civil rights obligation and said, if you join us, the gender movement will then open the door for the civil rights, the black community, what you're trying to work for. But it never happened. So all these fathers, these black fathers, couldn't live in their homes anymore. It increased the divorce. You have all these illegitimate kids, and then they get hooked on the welfare system. That was,
government control.
The war on poverty. That was Johnson's big thing.
Yep.
To solve the war on poverty, but it actually created more poverty.
The entire idea was
black
to perpetuate poverty so government control could be established over the individual. And
right.
Getting dad out of the house, so you have a dependent creatures like mother and children who have
right. And then you have that Titanic situation where here's your life raft. The men are going down on the ship.
Say goodbye to dad.
Yep. And that's what a lot of men face. And until men in general start looking to each other, and this is one thing the feminists have that men need to do more of, is they need to work together. They need to realize we need to be helping each other. We need to empowering each other, because that's what the feminist community is doing to themselves. They're helping each other. They're working together for a common goal. This is something men need to understand. Until we work together, instead of fighting amongst ourselves, once we do that, we're going to accomplish great things. You look at what happened with Vladek Filler. We empowered him to make good decisions. He was already this strong individual who believed in himself, and he believed, he never gave up. But you have these groups of people supporting each other, this network of support. And that's where the real power comes from. When you have a group of people helping each other, like they say, power in numbers. A Voice for Men, NCFM, Integrity for Maine, all these organizations looking to fight for real equality. And I say real equality because, there's programs that should be more equal, or laws that should be more equal, that really are derogatory towards men and fathers.
Let's talk about what the new DA has to face now. Matt Foster has, and I've been wanting to talk with you about this on our show for a while now, because this is a real hurdle he has had to face. He is the new DA for the Prosecutorial, for the 7th Prosecutorial District, and he can't just get rid of all this personnel that's been there forever, because he knows if he does, he's going to have to start the new personnel off at, what, 20 grand a year, and he's not going to get someone who can, at 20 grand a year, you're going to be lucky if you get someone who can, well, quite frankly, write their own name on a piece of paper.
Well, it's true. It's a little bit more than 20 grand a year.
That's the figure I heard, but I don't know. What is it, like 30, 35? I don't. Maybe that's
I think
I live in Washington, D.C. You can't live off of anything below 45 grand a year here. You've got to have something. But maybe it's different up there. But it's what it is. You're just not going to attract any kind of talent at all. And then you have people who have this, what a lot of people down here call institutional wisdom, who know how the system works. So he's kind of hamstrung. So obviously we didn't know that we weren't going to see this rapid, sweeping institutional change. But what is the situation now for him? Has there been any change? Has he gotten more comfortable? Has he gotten good people in there? Have there been other people like him who cared about the cause to come in and fix things?
Well, here's the thing. Once he was elected, a lot of the people who were in their abandoned ship, they just left. Paul Kavanaugh, he went to a different county. Kellett went into private practice.
Really? She actually got a job?
Well,
how well she's doing, you don't know, but
I have no idea. But I'd
be interested to find out, actually.
From what the Supreme Court said, is she's not hireable anywhere else except for private practice once she leaves that office. So
right, yeah. Wow. Does anybody know? Just out of curiosity, not that. Well, I'm sorry. I'd be lying if I said that I wouldn't like to see if she was, just a public notary now. I would like to see that. But seriously, beyond that, some curiosity here. What I would like to did she actually get work in a private law firm with a private family court lawyer?
My understanding is she's a solo practitioner. She's not in a law firm, so she's she's having to build her clientele up from the bottom. Obviously she's been in there. She's got a lot of connections.
For a living now. Well, she has connections, but she has to work for a living now. I understand.
But I'm hearing that she still has her connections, so there's still people who can help her. There's still people who were on her side from the beginning. It's that whole legal philosophy of what should be happening, and that it's about social engineering. But I don't think she has any power anymore.
She's definitely been. She's definitely going. Well, I would like to think that she's going to live out the rest of her years being a very marginalized person, as she should be. I think personally, she should be someone that should be forgotten as someone who has been, who's never any good to anybody anyway. That's what I would like to think. But I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I hate to sound mean-spirited, but you know.
I mean, it shouldn't. I mean, these kind of things shouldn't happen in
right.
a legal community. I mean, the idea of justice is not about revenge. It's not about, I'm out to get you, but it's kind of like,
well, whatever the best outcome is.
Well, I want you to think about it like this.
Maximizing the welfare for everybody involved.
It's like a police officer who has a quota of how many tickets he's supposed to give. And it's this whole, state ideology of it's a money generator. We have to bring in money. We have to justify our own existence to please somebody else. I mean, I understand, kind of why she did it. I mean, I think we look at society backwards as this money-driven, engine where we're focusing so much on a certain goal to justify our own means, and it kind of goes back to our animal instincts, the survival of the fittest. So, in society in general, you have de facto segregation. People of like minds stay together, for the welfare of the same kind of ideology. So it creates these groups, these factions within the society that are constantly arguing with other little factions. So it's frustrating because, as they say, united we stand, divided we fall. As a country, we are falling down because we're so divided in our ideology. It really is a question of, do we focus on individual rights or do we focus on society? And nobody can work together to find that happy medium.
Well, this is kind of where I wanted to get on my soapbox here. I'm glad that you said that. This whole idea of, and there's so many people that accuse men's rights activists of being trad cons. They want to go back to the days of Leave It to Beaver and whatever. And
Right.
and true, there are a lot of people out there who are MRAs and not MRAs who would like to see that. But here's the thing: you have to acknowledge that the idea of fatherhood, the idea of a man and a woman living under the same roof together with their children, is something that the state covets. If you want to be a totalitarian power, your biggest enemy is that guy living underneath that roof with his own children, and with or without the mother of his children. It's the guy that's saying, hey, I decide, along with my partner, the mother of my children, how my children are going to be raised, what they're going to think. I'm going to instill my own values in them. I'm going to hopefully teach them how to think for themselves, unlike what the state wants. And that guy is the enemy. Once the state, people know this. Once you get rid of that guy, once you get that guy out of that situation, you have a group of people whom by their very nature are dependent creatures. Mothers with young children are people who need resources.
Well, they're the most
You-
vulnerable
yeah.
because
Right. Exactly. And if you can convince mothers and or women women who want to be mothers or women in general that, you know what, you don't need this guy. The state will take care of you. We will take care of you. Yeah,
the state becomes the daddy.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. And the thing is, that's exactly what's happened. There's what is it, like 75 million people in this country on food stamps right now? Most children are born into poverty because they're born to single mother homes. This is the dream world for absolutists. This is a dream world for statists. And there are a lot of people who might be listening now. They're probably not. Who might, if they heard what I was saying, like, oh, that guy is just some trad con and wants to go back to days. I'm like, no. What I want is for the state to get out of the lives of individuals. Because you can have all this argument you want about how, oh, these MRAs, they just want to go back. And this has been a big bone of contention over the past year with the MGTOW community, and of course you've got the PUAs and the guys from Return of Kings, and they're all arguing about this shit. Yeah, it's like, what to do? No.
Right.
We want people to do whatever they want to do and be whomever they want to be. Whether they be a lesbian couple who want to have kids, I don't give a shit. Guess what? They're next on the menu as far as the state is concerned, and that's the truth. Okay? It is.
But when you add in an agenda...
It's the agenda of the state. That's what it is.
Right.
And you have to... Whatever you feel about traditional family values or whatever, you have to understand that the whole attack on the family is ultimately the attack on the individual. Whether the individual wants to have a traditional family or not, they're going to be on next on the line somewhere, because it's basically going to be attack on the individual. That's And there's a trad con guy on YouTube, I'm not going to name his name, who said that the family was the enemy of the state. This is a particular person I don't like very much because he is a serious trad con and has some seriously weird ideas about MRAs, about how we're all like communists or something like that. But that statement is true. And when you look at what's going on with the family law system, and then not just that, but with the whole criminal justice system, especially in regards to sexual assault and domestic violence and what's been going on in years, the whole bent is taking away due process rights, taking away rights of the individual, taking away the presumption of innocence. Why? Because those things that were put there to separate the power of the state from the individual. And once we do away with those things, the state has total control. And when you talk about social engineering, people, you hear these guys on Fox News, oh, these people in the military, or women in the military, it's all about social engineering. I'm like, dude, you don't even know half the problem. When these people talk about social engineering, they're talking about state control. They're talking about taking away individual rights, taking away the right to innocence, the right to the presumption of innocence, the right to due process, the right to privacy, the right to free speech. Look what's going on our college campuses right now.
Right.
This is what these people are trying to engineer. It's not just, putting unqualified people behind the trigger of a gun somewhere in a war zone. They're going to get killed. Oh, and then they're just going to make fools out of themselves. No, they are way beyond that. They are way beyond that. Their goals are much more broad and far-reaching than that.
Well, an interesting statistic with that is after World War II, during World War II, roughly 500,000 men died. Yeah. American men died in that. And women, right after that, they became the majority of the population. And then that's when you started having the civil rights movement, you started having the feminist movement, because they were now the majority of the voters. Women had already earned the right to vote. So there was this huge social change of the 50s and 60s and the war on poverty, and there was so much change going on. And what they say is typically white men are going to vote Republican. Everybody else is going to vote Democrat.
Well, I mean, they love talking. This is the thing about feminists. They love talking about class and race. They're in love with racism and classism. Right. They're in love with it. And they say they hate racism, but they love it. They love it. And they love a lot of things that they say they hate. They love rape. They love when women get raped. That means more money for them.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing with that is conflict. Conflict.
It's totally about conflict. It's totally about hatred and conflict, and how they can divide and conquer their enemy, which is individuals living their own lives. What happens when most individuals live their own lives? Well, they tend to form families because it's kind of like this biological thing that people have done since time.
And communities, and this is from the hunter-gatherer. We had to learn to work together to hunt and gather, and the women raise the children. I mean, this is...
Go beyond that. I would just say the individual who wants to do whatever they want to do. And this is what I like to tell to all my gay friends, who are numerous. I say, listen, I mean, you think that I'm just trying to protect these guys over here. I tell them, you're next on the menu. You think these people actually are your friends? They're not your friends. They don't want you to do what you want to do. They want you to do what they tell you to do. And that's what it comes down to, is that there have always been communities that have had gay people or people who were just odd, who didn't form families, that were welcome in the community for whatever reason they were. They were individuals, and other individuals liked them.
And they had a place in society.
They had their place in their group. And if they felt awkward in one group, they were free to move to another group. Yeah.
But it's like, first it was the attack on the Native Americans. Then it went to the blacks. Then it's now all men.
Yeah.
So we're in this process of, okay, destroy these people, get these people on our side. It's this whole process, and conflict, and this is the thing, conflict creates jobs, it creates money, it creates this exchange of money, the GDP is increased, and
it creates power for a concentrated group of individuals who are in the government.
It's the people with the power who can collect that money, right?
Yep. Or just the power. It's not just the money. A friend of mine tells us, dude, it's not just the money these people are after. It's about the power. They like the idea of hurting human beings like cattle. It's like.
Well, I mean, I don't think. I mean, I don't think there's, a lot of people who want to go out and hurt each other. I mean, I think it's a biological thing where it's that survival of the fittest, that it's dog eat dog. If I don't have the necessities to survive, I need to do something. I need to commit a crime to get what I need. Well, either that or I'm going to die. And this is, something that they proved even
the state likes that kind of individual. It gives the reason for the state to exist.
Right, for that protection.
Yeah, because they can convince, hey, there's this criminal out to get you. Forget the fact that they're a human being that can be helped, or that someone that you can connect with, or someone that you yourself might be able to help, or that we as a community can do something to help these human beings who are desperate, who are hungry, who never had a dad in their life, heaven forbid. Let's just put these people in jail, and then you'll be safe. Oh, by the way, in order to put these people in jail, you're going to have to give up some of your due process rights. But hey, you're one of the good guys, right? And that's how they sell it.
And here's the false allegations coming through. Yep.
That's how they sell it, and they do it. It works. And this works throughout history.
Let's take away your guns. Let's
take away.
Here's your passport.
You don't need no process. You don't need your privacy either. And what's this freedom of speech business? Hey, if you say something that's, quote, offensive, then you know what? You're a jerk, and maybe you should be thrown in jail too. And that's how it starts. That's how it starts.
Right.
That's how it starts. But really, that's what it is. That's what's going on.
That's sort of getting to the root cause of our whole mess. Money and power, and everything else in between.
Let's talk about you personally right now before we end the show. It's about
okay.
But after 10, you're currently and again, if there's anything you don't want to talk about, just or don't want to mention, then just let me know. You're currently in a custody fight with your ex that has gotten worse in recent months. Tell us about that. Tell us how you think your activism fits into that, to the extent that you can.
Well, here's the thing. So I want to explain like this. I met my ex-wife when I was teaching English in China.
Right.
So our relationship from the beginning had all this conflict. There was cultural differences, there were language barriers, so we had all these problems. Unfortunately, my ex-wife's intention was just to come to the U.S. to get an education, and she used the birth of our daughter to facilitate her wishes.
So she got pregnant on the slide with you while in China. You had to come back with her because she was the mother of your child. And
well, I didn't have to actually come back. I had a good job. I was teaching in a university in China. I was making good money. Unfortunately, for her to get an education was very difficult.
Right.
Under the circumstances, and she didn't want to get an education in China, so she started making allegations. There was threats of kidnapping. She was abusing our daughter.
Right.
It was this huge mess. So, after she actually attempted to kidnap our daughter, and I said, fine, I'll file the paperwork, we'll go to the U.S., and we'll work it out, okay? Let's just keep our daughter out of the problems, and that'll be it. So, right. A year later,
we basically held your daughter hostage in order for you to take her to the U.S. so she could get what she wanted from the education system and what she wanted from you, correct?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
And this has happened to a lot of fathers, and unfortunately,
a lot of people. Oh, I've heard this story many times.
And the government, I'm going to be writing a book about all the stuff that happened to me in China. It's insane.
If you give us some background, you weren't just some guy who was looking for some mail order wife. You were some guy who was in China teaching English, and you started a relationship, maybe obviously a sexual relationship with somebody that may or may not have been casual. All of a sudden, there's a child involved, and all of a sudden, this person has leverage over you, and they know it. Yep. Is that's what happens? So
absolutely. After our child was born, and this is something that really upset me, is I'm rocking our baby, mm-hmm. and her mother says, "Don't rock the baby. We don't want you getting used to her or the baby getting used to you."
Oh.
I'm like,
you're just a sperm donor turned to ATM machine and just get used to her not being in your life. Is basically what your wife said.
Well, my ex-wife at one point in time said, "My mother wants to know when they can retire now that I've got a foreign husband."
Oh, Jesus. See, okay, this is great. I hear this a lot from the pickup community, and I want to say this. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think this is very important. I see a lot of message boards and forums that are about marry foreign girls because they'll treat you better. Go Asian or go down to I don't know, somewhere in South America, and you'll find a girl that isn't infected with feminist nonsense.
Right.
and all. I'm like, and I think to myself, and I've heard so many horror stories like yours. I think to myself, wait a minute. Any woman with 2 brain cells to rub together knows, as long as they are aware of what's going on in this country, here in the U.S., they're aware that if they tag an American guy, they've got that guy, period. That guy is their ticket to a life that is so much better than what they had, and they see that guy as nothing more but a ticket, and they can be ruthless. What do you have to say to guys that? Tell us.
The interesting thing about that is, I didn't know what was actually going on. I mean, I really wasn't looking. But the interesting thing is, they actually have these birthing centers on the West Coast for Asian, mostly Chinese women.
Really?
To fly over, they're like 7 months pregnant. They come over to the U.S. They give birth, and
their child's an American citizenship.
Right? Exactly. And then they can get their free pass to come over at a later date.
Bring them and their family over, and if it's an American citizen that impregnated them, well, that's all the better, because they can expect child support and all this other stuff.
Well, I mean, basically, after 2 years of marriage, you're getting a green card, and that's for 10 years, and it doesn't matter, because as soon as we got to the U.S., it was a matter of them stamping her passport. They looked at her visa. 90 days later, she was receiving her green card in the mail, and then it was like, okay, that dear John letter saying, okay, we're done.
Over now, we're done. I've got.
You've fulfilled your obligation.
Yeah.
To get me here. But
if you don't mind me asking personally, how did your relationship start? You were probably just some young guy over in China teaching English to people, and there was this girl that wanted to start a relationship with you. Did you think it would start innocently enough? I mean, you don't. If you don't want to talk about this, because I know that you're having legal issues, but if you do want to share with this, then please do. But if not, don't.
Well, I mean, I was teaching English. She worked for the company that recruited me.
Mm-hmm.
So she was an office girl.
Right.
So we had some interactions, and it was like, okay, well, you seem nice. Let's have dinner. And that's kind of how it all started. But there were, I was still new to Chinese culture, and to understand exactly, when somebody says this to you, what does that really mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's these, lost in translation moments where you don't really understand each other, but you're still trying to.
Right.
You're still trying to go forward and figure out what's going on, but I mean, I wouldn't say, back to your comment of as far as, a lot of American men or British or whoever looking to Asian women, it's a crapshoot. There's some.
It's a crapshoot here, to be sure, whether you get married here or anywhere else, just because of the way the laws are. To be sure, you're right about that. I'm sorry.
Well, from the Chinese perspective, you have. I mean, divorce is very low. You don't have a lot of divorce in China, and it's partly because of, there's still arranged marriages. There's still there's still the stigma about getting divorced, and if you do get divorced, the possibility of getting remarried is almost zero. I mean, people don't do that.
Why is that? Is it because they think that you're not a good spouse for them? You're not going to be a good spouse for you? Is that basically how it works?
They want fresh meat. They don't want somebody who's. It's like you're damaged.
You're soiled goods, basically.
Right. So it's like, and I feel bad for Chinese women in this aspect. Is it
the same for Chinese men who are divorced?
anybody who's divorced in China,
Okay, so here
they look down upon that
right.
you weren't strong enough to keep it together. But if you're a Chinese woman and you're 28 years old and you're not married yet, you're considered damaged goods.
Right.
So you have there's so much societal pressure as far as maintaining that family and starting a family, because what actually happens is they don't have like Social Security when you retire.
Right.
You get married, the parents pay for your like they give you a house basically, or apartment, when you get married, so you have your accommodations already paid for. In return, you
they
are
live
paying
in that
for
house.
the retirement.
When they get old, they live in that house with you, and then you pay for your children's house, and then you live in your children's house when you can't get.
And it's this circle.
Right.
It's a cycle, but in a way it's good because you still have this connection to your family.
Family, right.
But at the same time, there's so much pressure to maintain and get a good job and get an education, so that you're having to pay for, your parents' medical expenses and whatever. Their food, because they're retiring like at 55.
Right.
But they work. I mean, you have a job in China, they're working 6 days, 6.5 days a week. Even students, they go to school 6.5 days a week.
Right.
I mean, it's intense.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, I know.
And I understand, from the aspect from my ex-wife, why she would want to come here and escape the conditions she was living in. I mean, I get that. I mean, if she had said, hey, can you help me out? We can make an arrangement. That's a different story. But how things went through, with the threat of kidnapping and still today, it's a matter of control, and it frustrates me. So when I went through divorce, we were, for 2 years after she had ended the relationship, we're living in separate ends of the house. She had one bedroom, I had another, and our daughter was basically sleeping in my bedroom because of the issues she had with her mother.
Right.
So there have always been these issues. And then she gets this pro bono attorney.
Right.
And I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars fighting these false allegations.
What are the false allegations that you're fighting?
Well, I mean, it was like, first she was scared that I was going to abuse our daughter, and then I was going to abuse her, and then it went to, I must be a racist. So she played the race card. I go to China under my own intention to go there.
To teach English.
Enter into a relationship with a Chinese.
With a Chinese woman, right. Have a child.
But then I'll have a child, and somehow I'm a racist. It doesn't make sense. But here in Maine, we're the whitest state in the nation. We have very little diversity. We don't understand very much about other cultures. And that's part of this huge issue that I'm facing personally, is people don't understand what I've been through. I go online and I talk to people who have experienced this, whether it was somebody from the Philippines or somebody from China or Japan. And we get it. We understand each other. This is what happens. But then you come back here to Maine, And they're like, well, that can't happen. But that's exactly the same thing I was thinking the first time I heard what happened to Vladek Filler. How could that be happening? That's not justice. We're so segregated as far as a community, as far as a state, that we don't really understand what's happening outside of our little community, and that's part of the problem. Whether it was, trying to educate people of Washington County, what was happening in that DA's office, talking about all the other victims, people don't understand. And that's what I'm struggling with right now is, I talked to a lawyer, and they're like, well, that can't be. And I'm like, this is what happened. This is my story. I've lived in France, I've lived in China, I've lived in Canada, I've traveled to other countries. I've seen the world, I understand different cultures, but trying to get people to understand what you've been through.
Injustice
is the hardest thing. Because they don't understand. It's these quick assumptions. You go into court, and maybe you've only got 20 minutes, a half hour to convince the judge of 6-7 years of injustice or maltreatment that either you experienced or your child experienced. There's not enough time. And this is one of the things that I think, this is why a lot of men fail in the court system, is they're only hearing a snippet, this little tiny piece of their whole life. And if you don't have a strong enough attorney who can take that snippet and really lay it out there and advocate for you, then you're screwed. When we were living in separate rooms for 2 years, I still paid for everything. For 6-7 years, I paid everything for my daughter and for my ex-wife. She paid nothing. She refused to pay anything.
And then there was really nothing there. You had no recourses to that.
The legal system says we don't care who pays it as long as it gets paid.
Yeah.
So again, I'm being held by the I'm being held by the balls, and right. You're going to do this for me,
or else I have your child hostage.
Right.
Basically, and here's the thing, and I have this argument with people who say, oh well, why were you paying all this money? Why were you doing this? Why weren't you going balls to the wall, MGTOW, blah, 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 blah. It's like, wait a minute, you don't understand the position these guys are in. When you have a child with a woman who is like this, you have no control over your life. You don't. And this is a legal situation, not some emotional situation,
right?
Not some like something that you chose to do. This is a situation you are in. And anyone, really any man, especially a young man who is ill-informed, can find themselves in the situation even though they would never have intended this for their life. Because when it comes down to it, you don't have control over your life. The state does. And when you have a child, that is the way the state exercises control over your life. And they will use your ex to do it because women have been, anyone, like I said, anyone with two brain cells rubbed together knows that they can take advantage of this system. And this is the vulnerability that men find themselves in. And just going your own way is not going to fix this. Being a PUA is not going to protect you from this. We have to change the laws.
Right.
Otherwise,
here in the state of Maine,
even
it
the
says
guys
you can't discriminate against, the gender of the parent or the gender of the child.
right.
Technically you have to go into the system, into the court, with a 50-50 attitude. 50% DNA from one parent, 50% DNA from the other.
That's
But
not how it
once
works.
you enter that door, that's when things change.
Yes,
That's when the false allegations come out. That's when you have all these
devices, all these legal devices that are there for mothers and women, and all these vulnerabilities that are put in there just specifically for fathers and men. That's when they come into play. The whole idea of gender equality is entirely superficial when it comes to family law and when it comes to domestic violence and sexual assault. It is completely superficial. De facto reality is that it is stacked against you as a male.
You have to prove yourself that you are.
Prove innocence before guilt. I mean, you're not innocent before proven guilty. You are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. That's what happens.
Right. In some aspects, yes, but you're actually having to prove that you are the better parent than the mother. Now, you've got 60 years of history against you, from that tender years doctrine, saying that women should always get the child.
60 years of slander, outright slander against fathers.
True. I mean, it is slander, but it goes back to that conflict again that I talked about. Fathers had, basically, years ago, the children were chattel of the father. They were property of the father, and then the court system did a complete 180, giving everything to the mother. The father fought it, spending all this money to get the child because the father needed the child for the family business. And then that brought things into the 50s and 60s, which gave rise to the deadbeat dad. Because the father has always wanted to be in the relationship with the child. The child has always wanted to be in the relationship with the father.
It's all about the future of both, basically. Here's your future well-being. You're my son, you're my daughter. You're my child, whether you're son or daughter. I want you to have a future, and I have this thing for you. We can work together to give a future for you and your mom. And this is ours. This is not something that belongs to anybody else. It doesn't belong to the state. It doesn't belong to the guy down the street. It's something that, because I'm the provider of the family, I have to look towards the future. And simply because you are my offspring, and I have an invested interest in your future, as you are my offspring, I want to give this to you. And this is something that the state cannot do. It not only it can't do it. It will not do it. You said the word chattel. You do not want to be chattel for the state. You would much rather be chattel. It's a bad word. Chattel is a bad word. You would much rather be under the charge of someone in your own family who has a vested interest in you being happy, healthy, and viable and wealthy in your life. The state has absolutely no freaking interest in you being any of those things in your life. The state truly wants you to be chattel. Truly wants you to be.
And in my situation,
in the worst sense of that word. In the worst sense of that word, because because statists, you take away they want to take away basic individual rights, and all of a sudden you have a situation like the worst situation being the Great Leap Forward in China, where you were at. I'm sure you're familiar with this history, where 25 million people died from starvation because Mao Zedong wanted to turn a full 1/6 of humanity into a giant ant farm. Do you want to live like that? No, you don't. But that's where we're headed.
Well, I mean, when Mao Zedong was elected, or however you want to say it, you know,
Hey, political power comes from a barrel of a gun. You know?
hey, that's a great quote.
He's right. Hey, you know what? That's why we need a Second Amendment.
That's true. You know, but
nothing truer can be said about the Second Amendment.
Interesting thing, though, you know, so many people died from starvation because he requested and forced them to turn over all their silver plates, all their property to the state,
so they could make steel in their backyards and these pig iron steel things. And guess what happened? A bunch of people starved to death because people weren't planting crops, people weren't going to school, people weren't doing things to improve themselves as individuals.
Right.
They starved 20 over, and we'll never know the full number, but like 20. See, he was the deadliest man in history. He was like 10 times worse than Hitler
and Stalin.
Right. And Stalin, I was just like crazy. And no one talks about this because he was a leftist leader. He was a socialist leader, and historians don't talk about him enough. The press does not talk about him enough. Ordinary people don't talk about what happened in China in the late 50s enough.
Well, the interesting thing, I remember years ago reading this article where Mao Zedong was going to give the U.S. 7 million Chinese women that he felt were useless. He was just going to give it to us, and this came out of D.C.
When was this?
I think this was Eisenhower. I want to say Eisenhower.
It was just kind of like communist Cuba. Hey, here are my prisoners. Get this. But in China, it was like, hey, these women are doing nothing but breeding people that we can't.
Right.
Here's some Chinese women. Have some Chinese women. No, yeah, have a good time.
And Eisenhower said, no, sorry, we don't need any.
Yeah, good idea.
But I mean, it's crazy how the state gets involved. It micromanages.
That's literally women as chattel.
Chattel, right?
Chattel. Yeah. Guess what? These people don't care about women as individuals or having rights about anything. They're chattel. You know, interesting word. That word chattel.
Yeah, I like that word chattel. It's useful.
It is useful. I mean, it's a naughty word, but you know.
You know, and that's kind of the struggle that I've been facing with. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, my screen just kind of went funky there for a minute. Is basically with my daughter, you know, with the culture, you know, my ex-wife is so focused on an education, she has no time for our daughter, and this is a struggle our daughter has been having with her mother. So our daughter wants to live with me because I make the time, and I'm a caring father, and it's so frustrating, you know, going through the court system saying, well, you've got this feminist attorney, and so she must know what's going on, and it's nothing. Men in Maine have a really tough time getting across what they need to get across without a decent attorney. Now, I have found a very good attorney who's willing to take my case. Unfortunately, you know, I spent tens of thousands of dollars, you know, fighting the divorce. Now, this is a couple years later. I'm having to go back into this legal fight. You know, my daughter doesn't want to have anything to do with her mother, and now we're in this legal battle again. So I'm in a good position, you know, to get custody of our daughter, you know, because my ex, she doesn't make the time. She's always doing things, you know, putting her in daycare, going off and doing this and that. You know, it's
not being a mom.
Not being a mom, you know.
Well, and you're being a dad.
Well, I'm being a dad because she's so focused and career driven focus on that education, that she doesn't have time for our daughter. And this is something that I've always argued for, to advocate for my daughter, is I'm here, I have the time, let me be a parent. But a lot of times the judges will say, well, the child is okay in daycare. Put the child in this third party situation where, even though you're available, it's the mother's time. And I'm like, what? You'd rather have the child be in daycare than with the father? And it blows my mind. So, my daughter has been through quite a bit with her mother. They're always in conflict. It's my ex-wife has actually, she has a new boyfriend. She has threatened our daughter to, if she doesn't play with her new boyfriend, she's not going to feed her.
Are you serious?
She has told our daughter this.
Okay, do you have that on, as your daughter said that to the court? Do you have some documentation for that?
There's stuff in place where that can be brought into court. I have so many pieces in place that can help me get my daughter and protect my daughter, because technically, under Maine law, that's abuse.
Yeah.
That is abuse.
As if the law matters.
Well, yeah, if the law matters, right? But it's hard to argue against that, And one of the things that I was trying to say earlier is, as a community, as a men's community, we need to be supporting each other. We need to be helping each other, because as a group, as a community, we can accomplish just about anything. Amazing things can be done, whether it's with Vladek Filler's case or whoever's case. If we're together, it's strength in numbers. Now, the problem that I face is, I spent so much time spending money of my own money on activism, trying to help, all these people in Hancock and Washington County, that I don't have money for legal representation. So I'm trying to raise money right now so that I can get a competent attorney, so it can say, okay, this is the issue. The child doesn't want to be with the mother. She's afraid of the mother. So many different things I have in place. The only thing I don't have in place is the attorney. And I can't afford an attorney, because all these pro bono places in Maine generally don't help men. I would have to actually go out, make a false allegation against my ex-wife, and hope that that organization helps men, which generally they don't, because those VAWA funds, only go towards helping women. So, right now I feel, I've had my balls cut off, emasculated. I can't be out there, fighting for other people, trying to help the victims, who are victims of that DA's office, because I have to focus all my energy and all my money on my legal battle right now. So, I've set up this GoFundMe page, which I'm hoping that you can put online, to help, so that I can get some funding, as a community for men. And then, later this can be like this pay me forward kind of thing, pay it forward, where fathers and brothers or whoever are helping each other get ahead, because that's the only way we're going to accomplish anything, is if we're working together. So I mean, it's been this struggle. You know, my daughter, has been alienated from me. My, I try to call. She tries to call me. I purchase a cell phone for her. She tries to call me. Her mother interrupts and cancels the call. And it's frustrating for her, frustrating for me. And, the only person who's going to be advocating for me in a court is going to be an attorney, and I don't have that in place. Now, for a person to go into court here in Maine without an attorney, it's suicide. You have these judges.
Yep.
If you don't know the law, they're not going to teach you the law, and they don't care. They're going to rip you apart. And I learned that firsthand. So I'm hoping as a community, as a male community, that we can help each other so that maybe it's $10, and then later on when they need help, we're giving that person $10 and we're paying it forward, because that's the only way we're going to win. This, fighting the system, changing the statutes and the laws. We need to, as a community, as a group of men, we need to work together.
Just to let the listeners know, you do have a GoFundMe account because you need a lawyer to make this happen. You've done so much to help Vladek Filler and so many other men. Quite frankly, the men's rights community owes it to you to support your cause. We have shown ourselves to be capable of making things happen, money-wise. I would encourage anybody listening to this now or later on to go to your GoFundMe account and just give a couple of bucks, because and this is really important. What you've touched on is so important. When you show that there's people behind you fighting for you, the system starts to break down. We've seen this with Vladek Filler. We've seen this with Greg Patnode. We've seen this with when the Judicial Accountability Committee was active with the Voice for Men. We saw this. People give money, they give support, they speak out, and things happen. And it's the only way things happen.
Because they take advantage of the little guys.
Right.
If you don't have money, they're going to get trampled on.
But this is when the little guys become big guys, and when the system changes to where if you're just an ordinary guy, you're just a little guy, you have a fighting chance, and the guys in the future don't have to raise money to get justice. I really believe that if you champion somebody, an individual, in a fight like you're in, that you can make a real change. We saw this with Vladek Filler. We got Mary Kellett thrown out of office. We got a lot of crooks thrown out of office in Maine. And you're in the same boat right now. So I would encourage anybody listening to this right now to go to your GoFundMe campaign. I'm going to put the link in there. Can you send me the link? Just send it to me via email. I'll put it in there.
Okay. Well, let me. Thought I sent that already, but hang on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe you didn't. Excuse me. No, I'm sorry. There's a long list of emails here.
I will send that right now.
No, I got it. I got it here.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
I'll put this.
I mean, this is one thing the feminists have going for them.
Oh, this
they
is
have this
what
sense of community.
Oh, absolutely. This is, and you're absolutely right about this. Okay, there it is. Shit.
I mean, I in a way I feel bad because it's going to take years to clean up what happened from that office. I mean, there's people who are in jail still.
Oh yeah.
Who have no recourse because they've exhausted all their legal process, and there's nothing they can do because of everything that's happened through the system, and the justice has failed them. And the more we stand together and rally together and help each other, the easier things are going to become, because what it does is it sets precedent. And once you have this precedent in place and this routine, it's harder for the legal systems to stray away from that.
Well, this has been proven. I mean, you. Okay, I can't put this link up in the Google Hangouts thing, but we'll definitely put it up on the website. It's like, tell me it's an error. We'll fix it. We will fix it. It's definitely something that's been proven in the past. When you rally around an individual who's having problems and you make a habit of doing it, people take notice. And it doesn't take much. It doesn't take a huge mass of people. It doesn't take a few millionaires to get together and make a ruckus and donate tens of thousands of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. No, it doesn't take that.
No.
Robert Franklin said this during the International Men's Conference, and he's so right. He said, the only thing we have to do is show up for the fight. And so many people in this movement simply haven't done that. And it seriously, and I have seen this personally. The only thing you have to do is get involved and say something and get active. And it doesn't take much. And all of a sudden, you'd be amazed at what could happen. Amazed.
Well, people get frustrated with the system, and they feel that...
And they get nihilism is a big thing, too. It really is.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people just kind of get nihilistic, and that's wrong. I'm sorry.
But they also give up.
They give up.
I mean, once they're out of their fight, they're like, "Oh, thank God!"
Thank God it's over.
They're wiping their brow, and they're like, "I'm out of it." And there goes their activism. When they understand it better than anybody else, because they lived it. Those are the people we need to be bringing in and saying, you've been there, you've lived it, tell us your experience, help others so that they don't go through what you went through. But we're not having that because we don't have these, because the fathers have been taking out of the lives of so many children. They don't have that foundation to be able to teach their sons or their daughters, this is what love is about. This is what relationships are about. This is what family is about. What they learn growing up is, it doesn't matter. I got two dads. I got two moms. I got step brother here, step brothers there. It's like they're overwhelmed with the consequences of so many other people's choices.
Right.
We need to fix that. And we need to be helping each other.
All right, I have your... Okay, I got the link posted on Men's Rights right now, but we're also going to post it on A Voice for Men as well. And we're going to see if we can just... You're not asking for much. We know there's money out there. and we're going to do what we can to help you out. We are, man.
And I did get confirmation from a friend who said he would match any donation over $50.
Okay.
So
great.
$50 or higher, he would match it. So
Great.
well,
listen.
Anything that you can throw in there, that'd be great.
Great. Well, listen. I want to say this before we close. You are a person who has done so much as an individual to make a huge difference. I mean, a huge difference where it really counts, and we owe it to you. Vladek told me this himself in an email. We owe it to you to support you. So that's what I'm going to do. People, let's make this happen. I know there's not a lot of people listening to it now, but we're going to get some views later on in the future. Hopefully people will listen to the show, and we'll make things happen for you.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Hey, man,
the more you can help me, the more I can help you. I mean, I'm the type of guy who typically doesn't ask people for help. I'm always helping other people, and that because of that, I sometimes forget about my own needs. And
there you go. That's why we help you out. So we're going to try and make this happen, and we'll do it. It's 11:15 right now. It's great having you with us. Great talking with you. This has been a really informal conversation, much more informal than I thought it would be. But the message is still the same. We're going to try to help you out, man.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I mean, I love being on the show. I love what you guys do. I wish I could have made it to Detroit, but
Well, you missed a good time. I'll tell you that right now. And I know a lot of guys who wanted to come couldn't come because guess what? Men's rights activists are broke. They're activists for a reason because somebody took away their kids and their money and all this other stuff. But I tell you what, if we're gonna have more of these conferences, and if we're in your locale, man, definitely try to make it because it's a good time.
Well, Paul was actually supposed to come to the rally.
That happens.
Unfortunately, that was around the same time as Detroit, and there was that issue with security, and
and again, the same thing with money and trying to figure out what's going on. It's difficult. This kind of activism is the most difficult activism you can get into on so many levels. There's no money. There are people throwing shit downrange at you all the time. There's always someone who's going to try to trip you up. But guess what? That makes it more rewarding, to me at least.
Well, I mean, all the funding goes to these feminist organizations that,
Yeah, they don't care.
Almost $1 million a year goes to the one organization in that area. One organization gets almost $1 million.
Government funding. Your tax dollars.
Tax dollars.
And that organization is hell-bent on taking away your individual rights and taking away your kids. That's what it's doing.
And as we also know from Vladek's situation, they coach the women how to talk in court and talk to the police and make these accusations that a normal person really wouldn't have to deal with.
Right. Well, unfortunately, normal people have to deal with it all the time now because that's the whole goal,
Right.
All right, Brian. Listen, we got to go. Thanks a lot for joining us again. We're gonna try. I'm gonna try my best to make things happen for you.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Sure. All right, buddy. All right, James, you still there?
Yes, I am. I am still here. Sorry, I was. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good. Good. I thought you fell asleep. But anyway, James, do you have any final advice for our listeners?
Yes, I do, folks. Take the red pill.